What was your initial reaction to this news that we kind of saw coming?
Well, I figured last night when the Mets made the deal for Robert Jr. that it was pretty much a done deal that Bellinger was going to come back to the Yankees. I'm glad it happened. I think he makes the team more versatile. I think he makes them better than they were without him. They're basically back to where they were at the end of last season, so I still think there's probably some more work to do. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the other outfielders on their roster now. If you figure that, Bellinger's going to play left field usually, right, and maybe spare Judge in right field, maybe play a little bit of first base to spare Ben Rice once in a while. How much is Jason Dominguez's playing time going to be affected? What happens to top prospect Spencer Jones? Do they maybe trade one of those guys? We've heard Freddie Peralta mentioned. So now that you got this big move out of the way, it kind of allows you to fill in the rest of the roster, given your current assets. But I'm glad to have him back. I thought he was a great Yankee. I thought he played extremely well in his first season, and he has to have done pretty well for himself. I mean, last year he was traded for Cody Poteet from the Cubs, and he got DFA'd about a week later. And now Bellinger, a year later, is getting $32 million a year contract. So it worked out well for him.
First 2 years, by the way, he makes 42 and a half, so he makes more than Aaron Judge. Just saying, Derek, just throwing it out there. Those are not my opinion. That's just the facts. So I hope you guys understand that for the next 2 years, Cody Bellinger is making more than Aaron Judge, who obviously has been MVP so many times, home runs, all that stuff. So just understand that he did pretty well, Cody Bellinger did. But I want to know what took so long. This was reported like 2 weeks ago that, hey, the Yankees have said, here's the offer. Did it take the Mets being out? Were the Mets really the only other suitor? Because if it was the Blue Jays like we heard about and there was other teams, well, this Yankee offer has been on the table for a long time. What changed?
Well, the Mets obviously losing a spot in the outfield. That took away one of their suitors. I think, Boris does this. He likes to go to the limit with his guys, take his free agents as deep as he can. I think Cody Bellinger ultimately wanted to know where he was going to be. He enjoyed his time with the Yankees. Why change? Go beat the Blue Jays, right? Don't join them. Let's beat them. Let's win the division. I mean, you lost it by just the head-to-head matchup last year. Maybe this year we come out and beat them. And I think you mentioned Aaron Judge. I don't think Aaron Judge cares about salary. Aaron Judge at this point wants to win a ring. He's he's accomplished everything you can do from an individual standpoint, other than maybe the Triple Crown, right? I don't think he's won a Gold Glove yet, but he wants a ring. And he still probably has that bad taste in his mouth from the 2024 World Series against the Dodgers. And, we saw him erupt in the postseason this year. Unfortunately, the Yankees couldn't get it done. He wants to accomplish something while he's still young enough to maintain these powers that he's got, right? So I think, Cody hitting in front of Judge helps him. He basically said, I'm going to get better pitches to hit in front of AJ. Let me go back there. I think it's a good move for everybody. It makes the Yankees more versatile. He can play left, he can play first, he can play center, he can play right. He's a hustler, right? He plays good baseball. The Yankees don't have a lot of guys who cut down on their swing with two strikes. They don't have a lot of lefties who hit lefties. So he helps the Yankees in a number of different ways. And I think that what took so long was just Scott Boras trying to get the best deal. And Brian Cashman saying, hey, we're not going to bid against ourselves. If you have a better offer, then take it. And obviously that didn't happen.
Did you feel confident in that? Did you feel confident when that came out that they were sticking firm and you were like, okay, well, we'll just pivot to, oh boy, who would we pivot to if we don't get Cody? And were you confident that the Yankees didn't need to change their offer?
I was not super confident that he would come back. We read about a week ago that the Yankees were willing to let him walk. And when you figured that the Mets and Blue Jays were both in it, you thought maybe one of them might go crazy and outbid the Yankees. But, if there's one thing that Cashman is known for, it is sticking to his guns in contract negotiations. He let Robinson Cano walk. He's let people walk before. And they basically made their offer and they stuck to it. And they said, Cody, look, this is more than fair. They added in some opt-outs and they gave him some incentives and so forth that, maybe make it a little bit more digestible for him. But at the end of the day, he's getting paid $32 million to hit in front of Aaron Judge. I don't think it's that bad of a deal.
No, it's not bad. All right, well, you mentioned it a little bit. Who goes? Dominguez, young still, hasn't really proven anything. And when he's gotten shots, he hasn't been great, especially in the outfield. Spencer Jones has been hyped for years as untouchable. People are starting to maybe lose a little faith in Spencer Jones, but now you have Grisham, Bellinger, Judge in the outfield with Stanton. If they truly want to play Ben Rice at first base, who goes? Because you kind of starting to get a little logjam there in the outfield.
That's a great question. And you also have Ahmad Rosario, who can play a little bit of the outfield too against lefties, right? You figure he might play left field when there's a lefty on the mound, or he could play third base if there's a lefty on the mound. So he's another one of these utility pieces. Personally, I'm a big Dominguez fan. I loved his approach against right-handed pitchers from the left side. I would have liked to have seen a bit more power, but he's just 22 years old. He's already hitting 40 points higher than both Austin Wells and Anthony Volpe, who've been in the league a couple of years. So he's a guy who can hit, who has the tools. I like him, but like you said, he's not a bad outfielder. He's an abomination of an outfielder. He is barely serviceable as an outfielder. Whereas you have Spencer Jones, who is a fantastic outfielder. He can play center field. He's got Aaron Judge level power, but he strikes out at a 40% clip in AAA. So it's like, pick your poison. What do you want? A guy who can't field or a guy who strikes out all the time? I don't know if they're going to move either one of them. It wouldn't surprise me if they let Spencer Jones kind of, start the season in AAA and see how he does against that next crop of AAA pitchers. When he got moved up to AAA at the end of the year, I got the feeling like a lot of the pitchers he was facing and hitting all those home runs against were the people who were left in AAA after the pitching had been diluted at the major league level and a lot of the top prospects had gotten called up. Let's see how he does to begin the year. If he's hitting 360 in June with all these home runs against like the top AAA pitchers, then maybe you take another look. But as of right now, I think I would refrain from moving either of those guys unless you have to as part of a deal for someone like Freddie Peralta. Maybe you package a Jones or a Dominguez with a Will Warren and maybe a couple of other prospects.
For people who don't know Derek, he's lost a lot of weight, and clearly he's lost love for Jason Dominguez. So I guess that's where it's at. But we had this discussion. I know you're not. I think you said when you froze that you're not good at predictions. But as a Yankees fan, you want a starting pitcher, and let's say the starting pitcher is Freddie Peralta. You don't get to choose who you get rid of. The Brewers say we want, and they probably agree with you, that they would want Spencer Jones because of all the things you said about Jason Dominguez. Are you okay getting rid of Will Warren and Spencer Jones for Freddie Peralta?
I think you'd have to do it. I mean, if you look at Full Kitchen Freddy, as you guys call him, I mean, he's durable, 30 starts a year. He misses bats. He's a great clubhouse guy. He's got a really reasonable contract. I believe it's only $8 million this year that he's making. I think Freddie, there's very little that I wouldn't trade to get Freddie Peralta. And Will Warren, he's a nice pitcher. He's controllable. He took a big step forward this year. If you look at what he did the previous season, where he just got shellacked in his first cup of coffee in the major leagues, I wasn't expecting much from him, but then he had a really serviceable year. He was 9-8 with, I believe, a 4.44 ERA. He had more than a strikeout per inning. He's a really good young pitcher. I think the Brewers would be able to do something with him, and I think he would be certainly one of the people they would want back. And the Yankees do have a lot of like young pitching, on the come up. They have Elmer Rodriguez, they have Carlos Lagrange. They've got a number of guys who could fill that, that final rotation spot if somebody goes down in spring training. So I think a Spencer Jones and a Will Warren it might not get it done. It might not be enough, but I would certainly have no opposition to including both of those guys in a trade for Freddie Peralta. Even if it is just 1 year of control, you pair up Freddie Peralta with Max Fried and Garrett Cole returning in maybe May or June. Carlos Rodon coming back. He had some trouble when he missed spring training a couple of years ago, and it sounds like that could be an issue again this year. So if he comes back strong, he had a really good year last year. You're looking at a pretty good rotation. You still got the 2024 Rookie of the Year in Luis Heel. So I think you can move a Will Warren and still be pretty good. You got Cam Schlittler. I mean, Cam Schlittler, what he did last year was amazing. I mean, maybe you can move Luis Heel as part of a deal too. I mean, he's got a triple-digit fastball. He's shown success at the major league level. I mean, I would have no issues trading Heel, Warren, and Spencer Jones if it meant getting back Freddie Peralta. I mean, that's the kind of pitcher he is.
Let me just say this. I proposed all of that And
Mhm.
Scott
Bring
Braun
me in. Bring me in.
and Eric Kratz said no chance that we will give up
I
that
did not
much
say
for
that.
1 year of Freddie Peralta.
Don't put my name on that. I did not say that. I was agreeing with you.
Scott was like,
it was
"You're crazy. You're crazy
a
if you give
beautiful
up
person.
Jones and Will Warren for 1 year of Freddie, or Dominguez and Will Warren, or whatever." Like, we're not giving up. I even brought up Luis Heel, and Scott was like, "You're crazy."
No, I didn't say you're crazy, but I was like, then Heel's going to be the centerpiece of the deal. Like, for me, Derek, I think the Yankees would go Heel and Jones is way too much for us.
They might say that, but I mean, when you're talking about a pitcher the caliber of Freddie Peralta, I mean, that is a big time difference maker. He's not just anybody. This is a guy who's making $8 million, and he could win you 20 games. He was 17-6, I believe. He had an ERA around 3. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but he's really solid. And if you have aspirations to win before the lockout and try and get Aaron Judge a win in his prime, I had Ken Rosenthal on a couple of weeks ago, and I said, what's the priority for the Yankees? And he basically said, win while Aaron Judge is still Superman, essentially. If you're trying to win this year, how can you best go about that, right? And I think all of you, with the exception of Scott, as professional baseball players, know that you go as far as your pitching takes you. And we saw that in the postseason, right? We saw how many starters did the Dodgers begin the season with? 9, 10 starters. And then at the end of the year, you've got Tyler Glasnow pitching out of the bullpen in back-to-back days. You've got Roki Sasaki pitching out of the bullpen. You got Yamamoto pitching back-to-back nights. By the end of the year, your pitching thins out, and I think as many top of the line pitchers as you can add, you need to add in this modern game.
Okay, let me ask you this, Derek. How much of all this is, and the Yankees and other teams have tried to do this for years, overhyping the prospects, right? Here we are. We got you going, Spencer Jones, Jason Dominguez, this guy. Oh, we can't trade him. He's too good. Meanwhile, really trying to trade him just because you're pumping him up. So how much of this is just overvaluing the prospects? And then if it's not Freddie Peralta, Scott keeps saying Nick Pivetta or Mackenzie Gore, right? Would you give up Will Warren and Jason Dominguez, or Will Warren and Spencer Jones for Mackenzie Gore or Nick Pivetta?
I'd have to look at Pivetta's numbers. I've always liked Mackenzie Gore, though. I like lefties at Yankee Stadium, and they have some good lefties on the roster. They just picked up Ryan Weathers. I think that they're looking at Ryan Weathers as somebody they can kind of coach up a little bit if they get him to cut down on his four-seam fastball, get him to use his pitch mitch a little bit. That's really a tough decision, right? I mean, you have to really take a look at who has control as a pitcher, like long-term control. Who's probably going to leave as a free agent. There's a lot of factors that go into that. I honestly trust Cashman a lot when it comes to trades. He usually does pretty well with trades, especially when dealing prospects. Sometimes they do hang on to prospects a bit long and they wither on the vine a little bit. I mean, we saw that with Clint Frazier and so forth. But I think that I'd be comfortable moving Warren and probably Spencer Jones for another top flight starting pitcher. Again, I'd have to dig into the numbers to see my individual reaction on somebody like Mackenzie Gore or Pivetta, but ultimately prospects are just prospects until they do something. And unfortunately, as much as I love Dominguez, he hasn't done a lot yet. And Spencer Jones striking out 40% of the time in AAA it's got to be a concern. So I think you got to improve the major league roster as much as you possibly can. You're in a very tough division. The Red Sox are going to be better. Roman Anthony is looking like he's going to be the next superstar in the league. Ken Griffey Jr.'s level talent. You got the Blue Jays that had an unbelievable offseason. The Yankees have their work cut out for them, and I think anything they can do to mitigate the improvements that have been made throughout the division will, obviously be something you have to do.
Let's say those prices are too steep to trade for anybody. I don't see Framber Valdez coming into the mix. Do you see a Zach Gallen getting signed by the Yankees on a one-year type of deal? To me, a prove-it type of Boris client who is an East Coast guy, has had success for his career. Just this last season, this platform year, he was down.
I could see it. It depends on what the asking price is, and with Boris, it's obviously going to be high, even if he had a down year. But if there's one place I do trust the Yankees a lot, it's in these reclamation projects. They tend to find guys that have struggled a little bit, make a tweak, get them to be better. I mean, it tends to happen with the relievers. I mean, look at Luke Weaver and Clay Holmes, two guys who came over to the Yankees as kind of unheralded pitchers and then got huge contracts with the Mets after the Yankees fixed them. Devin Williams obviously had a tough year. He ended up with the Mets too, but it's a different scenario. I think that any chance you have to improve your pitching, you should take it. If it means Zach Gallen, it means Zach Gallen. If it means trading for a Pivetta or a Gore, you got to do it. But I think the Yankees are more inclined to make a trade than to sign a free agent at this point. That just seems to be the direction of the offseason.
Last one. Where do they end up? Where do you have the Yankees in the American League East currently today after signing Cody Bellinger?
Well, it's January 21st, so it's tough to say without knowing the full makeup of the roster. But if the season started today, I'd probably have the Yankees and Red Sox battling for second place behind the Blue Jays. That being said, anything can happen in baseball, right? People get hurt, people get traded, roster issues come up, people break out. What if Ben Rice takes that next step and goes to a 35 or 40 home run hitter? What if Austin Wells next year, instead of hitting, 212 with 20 home runs, it's 250, 260 with 30, 35 home runs. I mean, that changes the calculus a little bit. Jazz Chisholm missed a month last year and he was on 40-40 pace. He still went 31-31. If he stays healthy in his contract year, what does that guy do? I mean, I could see him having an enormous season. So there's a lot of different ways to go. Right now, I would put the Yankees probably ahead of the Red Sox a little bit, but that could change depending on how these young players perform. And we've seen young players like in the division. It looked like a couple of years ago, the Orioles were getting ready to win the division for 10 straight years, and then they've taken a step back. I'm not saying that's going to happen to the Red Sox, but you never know with young players, right? The league can adjust. So right now, I'm going with the Yankees as number 2 in the division. I think they're going to be battling out for the wild card again. And I think maybe we'll get another Yankees-Red Sox wild card series if I had to make my bet in Vegas.